taxpayer-funded programs and landlords so that they are accountable to the community before they take root in that nest?
It's simple. We just empower community boards, give them more power and not suggestive body, but regulatory body, put them into the real, give them a seat at the table on these decisions. They are taxpayer dollars, and certainly this community and every community board throughout the city of New York should have more say on how it's used and how it impacts their community. The impact studies and understanding the effect it will have on a particular community. No one knows better than those that live there. No one knows better than the stakeholders. They should have more than just a suggestive voice, but real power on deciding any change in their district. Certainly, I'll be looking for legislation that can make that more possible. I just want to respond to comments that are being made. Folks, I'm going to be leaving soon, and I'm sure when I leave, there are going to be plenty of more bombs thrown at me. I've served this area for the last 5 years because my heart's in the right place. I didn't make any money. I spent money. I took a pay cut to go into elected office. I did this for the right reason. This country, this borough, has been good to me and my family. This is my way of giving back. So despite what you'll hear, despite what you're being told, despite all the negativity, which has never happened in this area, we have great, hard-working electeds, from Jimmy Vaca to Senator Jeff Klein, to Michael Benetello, to Assemblyman Joe Nye, who's been here for the last 5 years. I'm going to make one point, and that's simple. I can't be bought. I will never be bought. I am financially stable, and I put my own money into this race. $175,000. Folks, it's not about money. I'm doing this for the right reasons. So you, me, and our families can have a safer community, a better community, and a brighter future.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we are going to Mr. Santilli.
Thank you, thank you. I'll reserve my remarks only to if Mr. Joe Nye is in the room, okay? I never say anything when he's not in the room. But in reference to the 90 homeless shelters, remember why the city's able to, first of all, there's notice to all the community boards and the elected officials required by law. Don't ever be fooled by elected officials or community board telling you we were surprised. This was done overnight. They're all aware of it. It's by law, first of all. Second of all, the city went into agreement stipulation to provide these type of services. That agreement is 20 years old. That agreement has never actually been validated in court. It needs to be reviewed again. It needs to see what obligation the city has to people that are homeless in the street. We have to review those policies. And that's where the root of the problem is. We just saw a lawsuit, similar to what Mr. Joe Nye has mentioned, in Brooklyn. It's going on, the judge put a temporary restraining order. Same thing, services, right? Fair share of community services. And this case is probably based, the latest decision will probably be based on what Joe Nye's lawsuit, if ever makes it in court, if they ever have standing to it. The judge basically put a hold on it. And now the judge is reviewing the whole community. Every community to see each community. And I'm afraid that Mr. Joe Nye has opened up a can of worms for us. Because when Mr. Joe Nye wants to protect the South Bronx and say, South Bronx has too many. Unfortunately, the North Bronx is open. And people from the other side say, the north side of the Bronx does not have enough homeless shelters. And this judicial review is opening up a can of worms to development in the areas of Morris Park, Pelham Parkway, Troggs Neck, City Island, because we don't have those homeless there. His lawsuit is going to destroy our community. Thank you.
How long ago?
I actually had a whole response on the social service thing, but, you know, again, if the charge is going to be made that we're negative when someone leaves the room, let's put it all out on the table here. Let's be factual, and let's just be upfront with everything. You know, listen, everyone here needs to raise finances and raise money to run their campaigns, but, you know, Mark, with due respect, most of your money comes from people who live outside the city of New York, and you're going to leave a bunch of people here who are your constituents to go meet them. And I don't think that's right. frankly, and you're not self-financing this race. Most of the money's coming from people who live outside the city of New York, and many of them have ties to real estate. So that's something I will say to you, and that's something I will say when you're around or when you're not around. And again, if you are successful in this, you will leave an open seat that may sit vacant for a year, or if there's a special election, the county committee will decide, not the people, who the Democratic nominee is, and that's tantamount to an election. Listen, you might say this is negative campaigning, that's fine, that's your perspective, but we're all of different backgrounds here, of different jobs, of different ideologies, and we're all pretty much saying the same thing, that the amount of money the real estate industry is giving to you will have a negative effect on our neighborhoods, because these people are not giving to be philanthropic, they're giving to have influence. Many of these developers are developing in Pelham Bay and other areas, and it's of great concern. And to say there's never been a negative race here, I mean, with due respect, and I do respect you, but when you ran against Emily Rivera, that was a very, very negative, nasty personal race. And what we're talking about here is your record, and what we're talking about here is the seat being vacant, and what we're talking about here is real estate having too much influence on our district. I think those are relevant discussions that we should be having. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mark, did you want to rebuttal?
I certainly do, but after this rebuttal, I have to leave. But I do
Okay.
want to say, folks, I know who I am. I sleep very well with myself at night. And I wake up every morning thinking of ways that I can improve someone's life. I've been elected in office for the last 5 years, and I served you and everyone else with respect, true commitment, and dedication. I received money from real estate 5 years ago, and I did not benefit from it, and nor did anyone directly benefit from me being in political office. Don't be fooled. Folks, this is not a race about where the money came from. You want to talk about a waste? $100,000 has been taken from your taxpayer money for matching funds for candidates here tonight. I didn't use taxpayer money. I used money out of my own pocket. When our seniors go without, when our children go without, and our education goes without, there's better ways to spend our money than publicly funding elections. I've been blessed and very fortunate to raise money from all industries. When I was raising money in district, the claim was, Mark, you're being bought off by people in district special interest. I left the city, I went out of the state. Now they're saying half my money comes from out of the state. Folks, this is just a play on words. I know who I am. I promise you that I will serve you well, that I am not conflicted, and I don't owe anyone, and I cannot be bought. I promise you. So, I will leave you with that, and I did apologize earlier. I apologize that this campaign has gone so negative. I apologize to you that you've been misled in many cases. This lawsuit is one that we're going to follow through. It's not going to impact this area at all in negativity, because the studies that are done by borough, and the studies that are done in a way that it demonstrates the difference between the 5 boroughs of New York City, not by community boards. So we will not be looking at additional development in certain areas of the borough Bronx. This lawsuit is on behalf of the entire borough of the Bronx for the inundation of supportive housing units and the impact it has on our infrastructure, on our health care, on our policing, on our education, and our housing supply. It depletes affordable housing units. So God bless you. On September 12th, vote for Joe and I for a brighter future for yourself, your neighbor, and all of our families. Good night.
We have a rebuttal. We should, I think, in order to be fair, we need to give each of our candidates 10 minutes, but just said.
Yeah, I mean, I was directly appointed to, so I would hope I would get a chance to respond. Listen, I'm going to keep this focused on the issues. And listen, I will not be intimidated. When issues come to light that I have concerns about, I get them out there. There's a reason that some of this stuff has been picked up by the press. Because it's of concern. You can't tell a reporter what to write. They have independent thinking, they have independent judgment. They've decided to report on this race in many cases. As it relates to the public finance system, which I believe was the charge here, that money is somehow going out of your pocket. That's absurd. First off, the public finance system was instituted during the Koch administration, when it was revealed that donors were having too much influence on those in political power. That's the facts. Every other candidate in this race is in that system. Not only that, the fact of the matter is that Albany is trying to pass the system because both of the legislative leaders, Shelley Silver and Dean Skelos, a Republican and a Democrat, went to jail because things they were doing to their donors. That's a fact. They got convicted, rather, not in jail. They're appealing their convictions. I want to be very clear. Nowhere else in the country, listen, you might not like Washington, but let me tell you something. Paul Ryan and Nancy Pelosi didn't get frog walked out of the Capitol in handcuffs. That happened in Albany, and they did nothing to address that. That was a failure of leadership. And frankly, you shouldn't need to be rich to run for office, which is another reason we want to pass the campaign finance system. And you know how I know it's a good idea? Before Mark Joe and I ran for this seat, he voted for campaign finance reform in 2014. So don't give me this song and dance now that it's a bad system. And frankly, it does have influence on people. When you take a lot of money from the real estate industry, guess what? You don't support things like rent regulations that keep people in their homes. Money has an undue influence on the political process. Anyone who's in government will tell you that, and that's why we are working so hard to pass campaign finance reform up in Albany, where it's most desperately needed. It's why Republicans and Democrats go into that system. And frankly, as Egidio mentioned, with the exception of 2 mayoral candidates and the borough president, the most amount of money that's been spent has been spent by Mr. Jonah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to address the fact is that,
And he's with his out-of-city donors now, so congratulations.
just to be a little bit more, clarify the fact of campaign finance, everyone here. If you participate in campaign finance, like myself, Mr. Doyle, or no, Ortiz, or whatever, he hasn't matched yet, and some other candidates, you cannot take money from corporations. You cannot take money from special interest. You cannot take money from real estate developers. So once you take the subsidy, the matching fund from the city, you have to tell all these special interests, here's a door, you can't influence me. I owe to the city of New York my loyalty. That's not the case here because he is not participating in campaign finance. He's taking money from corporations, developers, special interests, and this is how they do it. So that's the difference. I just want to clarify that, make it more clearer. Having said that, the Mayor de Blasio, was accused just recently in the newspaper, saying that 90 homeless shelters is a payoff to developers. It's his way to pay off to give money, influence from the real estate. That's how influential the real estate board is. The real estate industry is basically 70% of all political contribution in New York City. The old saying is, real estate owns City Hall. Unfortunately, that's the truth. They do own it. And I'm here to say that this community is not for sale. Money cannot buy this community. I hope at the end, after apparently there's going to be over $1 million spent in this race. And possibly, maybe that $1 million might have an effect. I hope that's not the case. I hope the people make the choice. I hope it's not money. And also, let me be also clear, and I'm going to say something where I've said to Mr. Jonah when he was present. He took his oath to represent this community for 2 more years. He's supposed to be here until 2019. He swore on the Bible. But he's leaving you without an assembly. Enough. Thank you.
So, I'm the only candidate that has not received any money from anyone. I ran with my own personal money, and I ran this campaign for $1,500. $1,500, and I'm on the ballot. Check that out. My brother Jonah has $800. Fine. He found a way to get the money. Doyle found a way to get some money. Egidio. But I'm the only school teacher, the only person that walks the street. I'm the only one that has been educated here. I am a son of this neighborhood. I'm the only BMX pro that grew up from the gutter. 1977, the Bronx was dead. Let's be honest. My playground were buildings like this that were abandoned. You remember that? And you know what? What's missing here is regulation. You need a legislator like myself that has no ties, no interests, that's not exclusive to one part of the neighborhood, that's not bought. You need somebody that's neutral. I don't owe this to no one but my wife and my children and to you. Let me say it again. $1,500 and I'm on the ballot. School teacher, community worker, healthcare worker, recreational specialist. I opened the first HIV hospital. I worked in a drug rehab program. Look at my resume and compare it to the other guys. And think, who is more educated to do the job? Who's here to legislate? Who can provide legislation? So what, you build a building. But if you regulate it and you make sure that they don't violate the rules, you can have a building, because the Bronx was dead in 1977, right? The Bronx was burning. Let's be real. I grew up where they were selling dope, crack, cocaine in the corners, right? There was massive crime. The issue here is the crime. And how can we reduce the crime? And how can we support the police department? And how can we bring the money back to the neighborhood to continue to move the community forward? These guys are fighting over pennies, over cents. Money doesn't mean anything. It's the quality of life for our people.
Okay,
Thank
we
you.
have to stop.
And I'm sorry I went over, but remember, this Mark had an extra minute, Doyle had an extra minute, everybody had an extra
We
minute.
gave everybody
Thank
your time.
you. Remember, keep your eye on the prize.
Going forward, let's stick to policy and not make comments
agree with
about
it.
Jonah, because he's not here to respond now.
We responded to his
Yes,
request,
I know,
okay?
but going
We
We
forward,
responded to his request,
yes,
okay?
but going forward, because we want it to see.
Okay.
Okay, next topic. Next topic, okay, is sex offenders. Okay, this is the New York State law.
That's right.
The Sex Offender Registration Act does not restrict where a registered sex offender may live. However, if the offender is under parole or probation supervision, other New York State laws may limit the offender from living within 1,000 feet of a school or other facility caring for children. Additionally, there may be local laws in a particular county, city, town, or village that restrict where a sex offender may live. For information on local laws, it's recommended that you contact the town, village, city, or county in which you are interested. That's the New York State law. Currently, level 3 sex offenders are relocated less than 500 feet from our local school and next door to registered daycare. That's currently in Van Nest. Okay? Question is, what will you do to close the loopholes in the current law to provide greater protection of residents and children in Van Nest? And the second part is, why is it taking so long to fix the law to protect our children? Okay? Who is next? It will be Mr. Ortiz. Mr. Ortiz.
First of all, this issue is a state level issue. Only the senators and the assemblymen can change state law. City council cannot change state law. So the most qualified person to answer that question would be your assemblyman, your state senator. We all know that we don't want any sex offenders living anywhere near anyone, okay? But we have all different levels of crime in this society. And I'm not compassionate to sex offenders, to be honest with you. But I don't know where we expect to have people. As a community, we have to breathe a healthy community. We have to help the veterans. We have to help first the elderly. We have to help the people that are HIV positive, people who have gained strokes. And we need to help the middle class people, the people like you and I, that work, pay our taxes. We pay our taxes and we get nothing back in return. But as far as sex offenders, How much can a city councilman do but just advocate to the state senator and the city council to do their job to pass the laws? In reality, Mark would be a more go-to person to answer that question because he is the standing assemblyman. He would be able to answer, and he would be able to say, I did X, Y, and Z in New York State as far as legislation to bring this, this, and this, and that. But as far as the city, the only thing we could do is to regulate, monitor, and report to the community board and make sure that these people are watched and that the police department is in close communication with the community. The reality, this is a state issue. And local, state, and federal powers are separated for those reasons. Okay, the police department can enforce them, we have to monitor them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Is everyone familiar with Waters Place?
Yes.
You know those beautiful, nice buildings they just put recently by the highway?
Yes.
You know those buildings hold the worst sex offenders in the Bronx.
I have one in my courtyard.
They have to be in at a certain time, there's a curfew, but they're let out during the daytime. There's over, I think when I was looking at it recently, I believe there's over 25 hardcore sex offenders living right there. They wander the streets of Morris Park, Pelham Bay, Westchester Avenue, Westchester Square, and then they go home. Beautiful buildings. At first when I saw them, I thought maybe they were going to be, somebody was doing something right. They were building some new beautiful buildings for seniors. Maybe like this facility here. But no, this is what they have. There's no loophole. The state, as Mr. Ortiz mentioned, the state legislative and the Senate, there's not a loophole in any of it. The law is passed. It's that way. Does it need to be reinforced? Not reinforced, it has to be changed and made stronger? Absolutely. You know, if it was up to me, castration would be an option. But I don't think we could go to that extreme.
I have some friends that can help.
But the point is, the Assembly and the Senate need to get together. I don't understand why they listen to some of these progressive reports, medical reports, psychology reports that say that this is a treatment. Everything is approached to assimilation and treatment to cure these problems. That's not the case in most cases. These are some repeated offenders. When you look at their reports, some of them are very violent. Young children. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is an issue I've actually worked with this association on in the past, and I've been a part of reports that address a lot of the flaws we have in the sex offender system. I've actually worked with Andy Bowler over there, and we brought to light the fact that there was a sex offender living in a family shelter. Now, my friend Victor is often very right, but the federal government has intervened in some cases. The federal government made it so if you were in federal housing like NYCHA, but federal housing they sponsor, you cannot be a sex offender and live in that building. The issue really falls on the fact that the state and the city don't talk to one another. There's a lack of oversight. You need someone down there to look at the problem, look at where the misconnections are, plug the gaps, and see where there's a lack of oversight. And what we found in the Throgsneck house, they allowed a violent sex offender to move back in, which is against federal law. And the guy tells his actual address, I live in the Throgsneck house, whatever it is, and the state person puts it in the computer, and an email goes out to everybody. And no one at NYCHA is there like, yeah, or the state's like, maybe this should be on a blacklist, maybe we shouldn't because it's a violation of federal law. So you're seeing a breakdown in federal, state, and city government. Senator Klein did a report recently which showed that UPK sites where we're putting our children, they're not being enforced with the 700-foot rule that we have for the schools. That's another area where we're not plugging the right holes. Again, I understand what Victor said, in that eventually these people have to go somewhere. I don't know. I know no neighborhood wants them, and I know we don't want them here. But we can't have them near children. Those are ticking time bombs. And I know that's true. And again, as they are near schools, as they are UPKs, as they are NYCHAs, as they are family shelters, I've actually went through some of these reports sometimes and found out a defective zip code where the person just misreports their zip code, they actually live in another zip code, so no one checks these things. This is a breakdown between the city and the state. And something that I have been very involved in, and people here will tell you this, and I think actually you and I have worked on this in the past, Bernadette, is when I get the zip code and it's 10461, 10462, 10460, I'm on the phone or I'm on the email with Bernadette talking about what's going on with this guy, and we're making sure the police department is aware of that person. I apologize.
Thank you. Okay.
It was on policy though, I gotta give me a little credit on that, right?
Yes.
I stuck to the topic.
Okay, the next question, the category is developers. Okay. In recent months, the Bronx has witnessed developers engaging in bait and switch. Developers enter the community stating they will provide market rate housing, only to later switch their plans to include shelters or transitional housing. What would you propose to make developers accountable for their original usage to stop bait and switch? And we're going to start with, who we start with?
Glad you said that. Just recently, in fact, I put it here. I got a picture with me and Councilman King. I went in front of White Plains Road. And there was a bait and switch by Stags. I must say, Mr. Doyle was also present. And we went there to support Councilman King, and I admire the councilman for standing up there. And there was a bait and switch where there was supposed to be affordable market rate, and Stags turned around and did a switch and bait with HRA. It's contracted out. Hey, $2,200 for a bedroom or 2 bedrooms, $2,200 to $2,400. Who could afford that? The city could afford it, and they subsidize. So this is what happened. Beautiful building, elevator, beautiful for seniors. But no. And what was he out there? He said that these people, these individuals are bringing crime, drugs, prostitutions, panhandling. All the problems that have arrived in that area have increased because of this. And it's not fair. Absolutely. Mr. Stagg received a 421A. It's a program, city's program. It cost the taxpayers over close to about $2 billion. $2 billion. That's how he gets it. These tax breaks, eventually the developers, the developers actually don't spend the money to develop the properties. Eventually, with the tax break, you taxpayers wind up paying for it. Give it 12 to 15 years, and you actually bought for what it costed to put up the building. So it's a double, you get the cake and the icing on top of the cake, right, on top of it. So it's a problem with 421A. De Blasio sold out the community. He turned around and restricted with the 421A program. He said anything beyond or past, before 96th Street must be union contracts. Anything after 96th Street, any development, turns around, and you don't have to have a union contract when building, when developing. So this it is very, very important that we need to revamp. If I'm elected, I'm going to gut out the 421A program for developers, and it's not going to be a payoff for developers, and we're going to clean it up, and if anyone wants to build and wants a tax break, they have to build affordable housing.
Thank you.
Did you have a question you wanted to ask me or something? You said something, you made
No, I
a...
was just thinking about something, I'm sorry.
Was there something unclear that you want about the 421? You want me to explain it in more detail? I'll be very
I
happy.
should probably refrain from editorializing. It's not
Oh, I
appropriate.
see, okay, I thought maybe you want to make it more clear. I'll be very happy to.
Mr. Doyle.
I was with the GIDEO and Councilman King, and I think that's a very positive thing. I'm going to get to the question, and it is on topic before I get yelled at. I think that's a very positive thing you can take away from the two of us, is that this thing was located nowhere near the district lines, but we recognized that this could have easily been another property. This could have been the one in the Pelham Parkway Horse Stables. This could have been us. And I think that's something you should take from my career in public service as well. I've been working with members of this board for about 10 years. I don't think I've ever told a member of this board, it's on the other side of the district lines, you're on your own. That's not how I operate. And that's something you should take pride in if I'm fortunate enough to represent you. As it relates to the bait and switch, look, Stagg is a developer. He gives a lot of money to the politicians. And again, when they do that, they act like they operate on a different set of rules than everyone else. Stagg has interest in this race as well. What I would say to you is that as it relates to the bait and switch, they signed, as GIDEO said, they signed for an affordable housing subsidy. We paid for that. they get a reduction on their property tax bills to construct those facilities. Because we, the public, have determined that we want affordable housing in our neighborhoods. Now, we can get into why the affordable housing isn't truly affordable, and I'd be very open to doing that in the next question. I have more than 90 seconds. But when they sign those documents, it should be legally binding. And